The chamber of the Galactic Council was massive. Its walls shimmered with soft light, reflecting the colors of the countless species that had gathered. The floor was polished and smooth, echoing the footsteps of diplomats and delegates as they moved about. From a distance, it looked like a celebration of unity, but anyone who observed closely could see the tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to break. For centuries, the Council had governed trade, conflict resolution, and exploration across countless star systems. Every major civilization had a voice here, yet every voice also carried its own hidden agendas. And somewhere near the back of the chamber, a small group of humans quietly observed, taking notes, their expressions calm and unreadable. The debate today was about a newly discovered planet in the outer rim, Aurora Prime. Its resources were rare and valuable, minerals that could power starships for centuries, water so pure it was said to sustain entire colonies, and an atmosphere perfect for bioengineering experiments. Several species had laid claim, and the Council was tasked with deciding its fate. "Clearly," said Thalan, a six-limbed diplomat from the Valari cluster, "Aurora Prime must be divided according to our share of the Council vote. Anything else would be chaotic and unfair." Across the chamber, the Iskatra delegate shook his massive head. "You Valari always think fairness is a matter of numbers. You do not consider efficiency. The Iskatra propose a joint administration. We will oversee extraction and distribute resources evenly to all members. This is logical and practical." "Practical?" a small green-skinned creature from Nerelia hissed. "Practical is seizing what you need before anyone else can. The Iskatra logic leads to stagnation. We must act boldly, or the planet is lost to us." The humans, seated quietly near the side of the chamber, did not raise their voices. One of them, a tall man with dark hair named Captain Elias, wrote something in a small notebook. Another, a woman named Dr. Mara Chen, leaned back slightly, observing the delegates carefully. They did not interrupt, though their presence was noted. There was something about humans that made others uneasy. They were calm, precise, and somehow always seemed to be thinking several steps ahead. The debate grew louder. Voices overlapped. Threats were implied, and for a brief moment it seemed the chamber might erupt into a physical confrontation. But the humans remained silent, as if the storm around them did not exist. Suddenly, the chamber lights dimmed and the floor trembled slightly. Screens across the room lit up with emergency messages. "Attention," said a calm, artificial voice. "An anomaly has been detected in the Veyron Nebula. Fluctuations in the star's magnetic field are increasing at an alarming rate. Nearby systems are at risk." Panic spread quickly. Delegates leapt to their feet, shouting over one another. Data streams flashed across the screens, showing starships caught in unstable regions, colonies under threat, and systems at risk of collapse. "Contain it," shouted Thalan. "Deploy fleets immediately," the Iskatra delegate bellowed. "Our fleets are already in position. The Council should coordinate." "Coordinate?" hissed the Neurelian. "There is no time for coordination. We must act." The humans did not immediately move. They watched, silent as the chaos unfolded. And yet, within that calm observation, there was a quiet confidence, a presence that somehow made others feel the weight of their own inadequacy. Captain Elias finally stood, his voice clear but soft. "If you do not act together, you will fail. Fragmented efforts will only make the problem worse. I recommend halting all current maneuvers until a single plan is established." There was a brief pause. The room went quiet and many delegates frowned. Some saw it as a challenge while others felt the truth in his words. Yet no one truly wanted to follow advice from humans. They were outsiders, unpredictable and strangely independent. As the Council bickered, the humans began to prepare quietly. Ships were readied, systems checked, and plans set in motion, but instead of rushing to the Council's aid, they prepared to leave. "Elias, are we really going?" Dr. Chen asked. He nodded, eyes calm. "Yes, they need to see the consequences of their actions. We cannot save everyone if they refuse guidance. It is time for us to step back." By the time the Council realized the humans had moved, it was too late. The human fleet had left the immediate vicinity of the Council chamber, moving toward the edge of the galaxy in a silent exodus. No announcement was made. No speeches were given. Their departure was like a shadow sliding quietly across a sunlit room, sudden but almost unnoticeable at first. Panic filled the chamber as emergency requests for human assistance went unanswered. Where are the humans? Demanded Thaln. They were supposed to assist. Why are they not responding? They have left, stammered a junior aide. We cannot contact them. The council erupted into chaos. Fleets were deployed without coordination. Colonies were abandoned in the confusion, and negotiations devolved into accusations. The absence of humans, who had always acted as a stabilizing presence, left the council exposed. The anomaly in the Veyron Nebula continued to grow unchecked, swallowing starships and threatening entire systems. From afar, the humans watched. Their ships hovered at a safe distance, monitoring the situation but intervening only in emergencies that could lead to irreversible loss of life. Rescue pods were sent quietly, resources redirected and warnings delivered to colonies, but always without engaging in the council's disputes. It was a quiet reminder that humans could intervene without dominating, that their presence alone could change outcomes without force. Back in the council chamber, leaders began to grasp the reality of their situation. We underestimated them, said the Iskatra, finally lowering his voice. We thought they were weak. We ignored their counsel, and now the room was silent, except for the hum of emergency systems and the occasional transmission report of another system in peril. Alien delegates exchanged nervous glances, realizing that the humans' quiet departure was a deliberate lesson. They had been relied upon not because of their strength or numbers, but because of their judgment, foresight, and sense of responsibility. Even as panic spread, the humans' example was clear. They did not seek glory, power, or dominance. They acted with clarity and morality, leaving the council to face the consequences of their own indecision. Hours passed. Systems began to fail. Fleets collided due to poor coordination, and supply lines were disrupted. The council, once confident in its authority, now struggled just to maintain basic control. Reports of chaos filtered in from every corner. A mining colony trapped under a collapsing asteroid field, a scientific research station losing life support, trade routes blocked by uncontrolled stellar storms, and yet, in all this turmoil, the humans remained calm. Captain Elias spoke to his crew. We do not intervene unless lives are at risk. They must understand that leadership requires more than arguing and posturing. They must act responsibly. Dr. Chen looked out at the galaxy from the observation deck. Do you think they will learn? He smiled faintly. Some will. Others will fail. But eventually the lesson will spread. Humans have never needed to dominate to teach others the value of thought, foresight, and action. By the end of the first cycle of the anomaly, the council began to fracture. Alliances collapsed, old rivalries resurfaced, and debates over blame took precedence over action. The humans, meanwhile, moved silently through the stars, continuing their quiet observations, always ready to save lives but never to intervene in politics. It was a strange kind of victory, one not marked by battles or conquests, but by subtle influence. The humans had left, yet their presence was felt everywhere. The council could no longer ignore the fact that, without humans, their authority was fragile, their decisions flawed, and their wisdom limited. As the stars stretched into the black expanse of space, Captain Elias reflected on the nature of humanity. They had thrived not because of violence or domination, but because of persistence, ingenuity, and morality. And now, as they departed quietly, leaving the council to face its actions, the galaxy would slowly come to understand the true value of humans, not as rulers, but as guides, thinkers, and protectors. And so, the humans vanished from the council chamber, not in triumph, not in anger, but with quiet dignity. The council, left to its own devices, would soon discover that the absence of humans was more powerful than any presence could have been. The galaxy had been tested. The council had faltered, and humanity, ever patient, waited silently at the edge of the stars, ready to teach once more when the time was right. The Galactic Council was in disarray. Without humans to guide the discussions and stabilize decisions, the once structured chamber had become a cacophony of frustration, blame, and fear. Screens displayed systems in peril, mining colonies cut off from supplies, research stations losing critical support, and fleets stranded in unstable sectors. Talon, the Valari delegate, paced across the chamber. His 6 limbs clicked softly on the polished floor. This was not supposed to happen, he muttered. How did we allow the humans to leave? They were our stabilizers, our voice of reason. Reason? snapped the Norellian representative, green scales shimmering. They were outsiders. We are the council. We have rules, traditions, and authority. We do not need humans. But even as the Norellians spoke, their voice trembled. Ships under their command had collided. Vital resources had been lost and entire trade routes were blocked. They were beginning to see that humans had been more than outsiders. They had been the unseen hand keeping chaos at bay. From afar, Captain Elias observed the turmoil through the fleet's advanced communication sensors. His ship Endurance drifted silently near the edge of the Veyron Nebula. Humans did not need to intervene directly to make their point. The Council's own failures were a lesson, and it was unfolding exactly as expected. Dr. Mara Chen studied the galactic maps. Elias, do you think they will understand? He looked at her thoughtfully. Some will eventually. Others may take longer. But what matters is that they experience the consequences of their actions themselves. Guidance is only meaningful when it is chosen, not forced. Meanwhile, back in the council chamber, the alien leaders scrambled. The Iskatra delegate barked orders to fleets, but coordination was impossible. Messages were misread, data streams overloaded, and priorities conflicted. Where humans had once streamlined operations, there was now confusion. A crisis emerged when a massive magnetic storm erupted near the Veyron Nebula. Ships caught in the storm were thrown off course. A research station on the edge of the anomaly sent a desperate call for help. The council debated who should respond. This is the Isktra's responsibility, shouted Thalon. No, the Norellians, argued another. We must prioritize the nearest fleet. Arguments grew louder, ignoring the urgent distress messages. The station's automated defenses activated, but they could only hold off the worst damage temporarily. Lives were at risk. From beyond the Council's control, humans acted, but quietly. Endurance and several smaller ships rerouted safely, releasing rescue pods and medical supplies to the stranded station. No one knew who had saved them. Reports simply noted that survival systems had been restored, that emergency supplies had arrived without explanation. The Council could only speculate. Who could have done this? Asked one panicked diplomat. Some unknown force? Elias watched the chaos unfold with calm detachment. It is important that they realize help exists without authority being enforced. They must learn responsibility, not dependence. As days passed, the Council's inefficiency continued. Trade routes collapsed further, fleets clashed accidentally, and colonies went without essential resources. Leaders began to see the truth. The humans had not been present to dominate. Yet their absence revealed just how reliant the Council had become on their wisdom. Finally, a small human envoy returned, but not to take control. Captain Elias, Dr. Chen, and two other humans appeared in the Council chamber quietly, standing at the back as observers once more. The Council went silent. All eyes turned toward them. For the first time, alien leaders felt a sense of humility. Their arrogance and indecision had led to near disaster. The humans had returned not to punish, but to demonstrate the principles of leadership and cooperation. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. We have not returned to lead you. We have returned to remind you of what leadership requires. Coordination, foresight, and responsibility are not enforced by authority. They are chosen by those willing to act for the greater good. He gestured toward the screens displaying the aftermath of the Council's failures. Look at what has happened in our absence. These are the results of indecision and selfish debate. Your systems have suffered. Fleets have been lost and countless lives were at risk. It did not need to be this way. The Council remained silent. Some delegates avoided eye contact while others studied Elias with a mixture of awe and guilt. Dr. Chen added, We did intervene where life was in immediate danger, but otherwise we allowed events to unfold. You now understand the consequences of relying on appearances instead of true understanding. Leadership is not measured by titles or votes. It is measured by action, foresight, and care for those you serve. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then Thaln spoke, his voice subdued. We have been arrogant. We thought humans were unusual, perhaps even inferior. But we now see the truth. Their quiet guidance was more valuable than our loud decisions. We have failed to see it until now. The Iskatra delegate nodded slowly. We were blinded by politics and ego. We must learn to work together, not simply argue over who is right. The Norellian representative added, We underestimated patience and planning. The humans have shown us that strength is not in noise or force. It is in wisdom, action, and responsibility. Elias smiled faintly. Then perhaps this crisis has served its purpose. The Council can now rebuild, not by copying humans, but by understanding the values that guide them. Over the following cycles, reforms began. Communication protocols were streamlined, decision-making processes were simplified, and alliances were based on trust rather than manipulation. The Council started to act with purpose rather than posturing, yet humans did not stay. Once the Council had begun to stabilize, Captain Elias and his team departed quietly again, moving toward unexplored regions of the galaxy. They left no fanfare, no ceremony, and no expectation of thanks. Their influence was subtle but profound. In their absence, alien species often reflected on the lessons they had witnessed. Humans had never sought power, domination, or glory. They had acted with clarity, foresight, and a quiet moral authority. Their presence or absence revealed the potential of thoughtful, intelligent, and responsible action. On a distant observation deck, Elias looked at the galaxy stretching before him. "We do not need to rule," he said. "We only need to show the way and ensure life can continue." Dr. Chen nodded. "Do you think they will remember the lessons?" "They will," he replied. "Not all at once and not all easily. But they will remember that leadership requires more than titles, votes, or technology. It requires wisdom, care, and foresight. That is the human way." Even as humans drifted through the stars, their legacy spread. Colonies once struggling began to thrive again. Fleets reorganized, guided by new protocols inspired by human observation. Trade routes reopened. Research resumed. Slowly, the galaxy began to heal from the mistakes that had seemed inevitable. And in that healing, a new respect for humanity emerged. Not fear, not envy, but respect for a species that could influence without dominating, that could teach without force, and that could guide by example alone. The Council learned, perhaps for the first time, that intelligence and moral clarity were more powerful than any weapon, more influential than fleets, and more lasting than any law. As stars shimmered across the void, humans moved quietly among them, ready to intervene only when necessary, always careful not to dominate, always patient, always prepared. They were not rulers, they were a guiding presence, a reminder that the galaxy was vast, complex, and full of potential, but only if its inhabitants acted wisely. The lesson was clear. Underestimating humans could be dangerous, not because of their strength, but because of their wisdom. And as the Council reflected on the consequences of its indecision, it began to understand that the true power of humanity lay in its ability to act with thought, foresight, and integrity. In the end, humans had departed quietly once more, leaving the galaxy forever changed, not through war or domination, but through intelligence, patience, and the quiet force of example. And the Council, left to face its actions, would never forget the lesson.